Muy buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos a FINNOSUMMIT Webinar patrocinado por Mastercard. Mi nombre es Franco, soy director de FINNOSUMMIT. Es un gusto acompañarlos el día de hoy. Estamos transmitiendo en vivo desde la Ciudad de México para toda Latinoamérica. Es la 1 de la tarde, casi en punto. Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí. Les doy una gran bienvenida a todos los que están conectados, ya casi más de 100 personas conectadas el día de hoy, así que muchas gracias a todos. Queríamos también agradecer a Mastercard por apoyarnos el día de hoy en esta iniciativa donde podrán actualizarse sobre las últimas tendencias en innovación en servicios financieros. Queremos también invitar a la audiencia que nos acompaña en este webinar a que nos siga en redes sociales a través de @FINNOSUMMIT y @MastercardMex, y también nos pueden seguir a través del hashtag FSWebinar. Para esta edición invitamos a un gran experto, líder en ciberseguridad de Mastercard, que hará una presentación sobre ciberriesgos y en cómo permanecer resilientes en esta era de transformación y disrupción. Como todos sabrán, en los últimos días el e-commerce ha tomado un impulso enorme, muchas ventas en e-commerce, pero también a medida que sube el e-commerce, también suben los ciberdelitos. Es por eso que hoy Simon nos va a acompañar y nos va a comentar varios tips para que nosotros podamos tener en claro cómo cuidarnos de este cibercrimen. Les prometo que en este webinar quizás no saldrán como expertos en ciberseguridad, pero sí van a tener varios tips como para no ser un objetivo fácil del cibercrimen. Y ahora, como hacemos en todos los eventos de FINNOSUMMIT, queremos hacerlos participar a ustedes de nuestra herramienta de SparkUp, el cual queremos que estén interactuando con el speaker invitado el día de hoy y puedan hacerle preguntas. Entonces, como aparece ahora en pantalla, pueden entrar a través de su dispositivo móvil escaneando el código QR que figura en pantalla, como así también pueden entrar a través de finovista.sparkup.live. Ahí ingresan el código YHYPL, ingresan ese código y ahí pueden entrar para hacerles las preguntas a Simon. Y ahora, para practicar un poco, para que se vayan entrando en calor con esta herramienta, vamos a hacer una pregunta a toda la audiencia que está aquí conectada. Queremos saber cómo valoran la calidad del personal dedicado en su organización a la prevención y gestión de los ataques cibernéticos. Queremos saber qué piensan ustedes, de qué nivel tiene en ciberseguridad en materia de prevención y gestión de los ataques cibernéticos su organización. ¿Creen que cuentan con una alta cualificación? ¿Creen que es de buena calidad, pero hay que reforzar la capacitación? ¿O directamente creen que no cuentan con una calidad adecuada y urgentemente se tiene que invertir? Entonces los invitamos a todos a participar. Recuerden el código YHIPL y ahí ingresan y ya directamente les van a figurar las preguntas. Ya estoy viendo que la audiencia ya está votando, está muy parejo las tres opciones. Ahí están las tres casi igual. A ver si... Muy bien. Entonces, por ahora la audiencia está diciendo que es de buena calidad, pero que hay que reforzar la capacitación o contratar perfiles más especializados. Muy bien. Muy bien, eso quiere decir que este webinar les viene bien para seguir capacitándose y reforzar esta capacitación. Entonces, sin más, seguimos ahora con Simon. No apaguen su SparkUp, manténganlo ahí en una segunda pantalla o en sus celulares para que a medida que Simon esté presentando, ustedes puedan ahí hacerles preguntas que le haremos llegar finalizado el webinar. Entonces, sin más, ahora vamos a un breve video con una propuesta de Mastercard, un breve video que no dura más de un minuto, en el cual Mastercard nos hace esta propuesta de empecemos algo que no tiene precio. Corramos video.
Ahora lo esencial es disfrutar lo simple, lo normal, lo cotidiano, porque son las cosas que no tienen precio las que realmente importan en la vida. Mastercard.
We are back and we are live with Simon Hunt. Welcome, Simon, to FINNOSUMMIT Webinar.
No, thank you for inviting me. Good. Thank you for letting me do this. It's a privilege.
So, thanks, Simon. To all the audience, I want to introduce you Simon Hunt. He's Executive Vice President and Cybersecurity Product Innovation at Mastercard. He helps Mastercard deliver on their vision of a world beyond cash through robust cybersecurity solutions which facilitate transactions, reduce fraud, and keep our money and information out of hands of cyber criminals. So please join me welcoming Simon Hunt. Simon, all yours.
Thanks very much. And let me hope the technology works for us today. There we go. I hope everything's working. Oh, maybe even the wrong screen. There we go. How's that? So I'm going to spend 35-40 minutes talking you through some of the aspects of cybersecurity in the world as we know it today. I hope to leave a lot of time for questions. I know that's really important to us. And please, the more interactive this experience is for everyone, the more we'll all learn. Let me start by talking about why Mastercard cares so much about this. And I won't dwell too deeply on this. This is about the criminals and about the cyber problem. But for us, there's some big statistics on this slide, which you'll see make things quite important. $350 billion problem, $5.2 trillion of losses by the end of next year. These are losses to good businesses, to people, to us as individuals. This is money that's flowing to criminals, which isn't helping society. It isn't making our lives better. It isn't making goods and services cheaper. That's all very negative, and that's kind of diminishing trust in the digital world. Digital crime, of course, huge. There's not a day goes by where we don't hear about some hacking or some fraud or some scheme. It's $18 trillion of transaction values by 2024. Which are all potentially at risk if we don't solve the trust problem in the digital ecosystem. By 2024, we're expecting $50 billion of fraud. Again, all that's money going to places which isn't helping society. And if there's one thing we all want is our lives to be better, our lives to be simpler, our lives to be safer, to have more trust, to have more credit, to be able to use electronic banking, all these great experiences. Digital crime detracts from that journey. And I, for one, am very passionate about making sure that everybody in the world gets the benefits of the digital economy, that nobody's excluded. And criminals are kind of working against that goal. Finally, of course, economic crime. As we've moved to digital away from cash, the nature of economic crime has changed. Luckily, robberies are down, pickpocketing is down because people don't have cash anymore. But now digital attacks are on the rise. And because digital attacks can occur from anywhere in the world, the criminals sometimes feel quite safe. They operate multinationally, they operate in jurisdictions that have poor law enforcement or poor cybersecurity crimes, and they attack everyone, you and I as well. So KYC, know your customer, anti-money laundering, is very, very important. And of course, all these things are directly related to Mastercard's business of electronic payments. And it all comes down to trust. If people don't trust electronic payments, they won't use them. And all the benefits of electronic payments then start disappearing. So I think you can understand Mastercard is deeply, deeply passionate about solving this problem. It's a direct barrier to all the exciting and amazing experiences, let's say the priceless experiences, to use Mastercard's marketing. We want those for everybody. And the more we can protect people, the more we can eliminate cybercrime, the faster we can go on that journey. So that's the Mastercard pitch. But let's start with the doom and gloom of the situation. $1.5 trillion a year are lost to cybercrime, of which around $600 billion is spent back on crime. And I'll dig into this data a little more in a little more detail later on. But that's a horrendous number. And I look at that number and the $600 billion, and I think about every small and every large cyber crime I hear about. Every time somebody loses 1 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoins, $20,000, $1 million. And I think, how much of that is being used to pursue more crime? It's funding socially evil things, and it's morally outrageous. We should all be very offended by that. $22.3 billion a year is the cost of not preventing credit card cybercrime. Just credit cards alone is $22 billion. These numbers are incredibly large and incredibly worrying. Every 39 seconds in the world, there's a cyber attack on somebody. And if you think about the fact there are not that many cyber criminals, there are a few gangs, maybe a few thousand people worldwide. If there's attacks every 39 seconds, you can now see that they're all automated. These aren't people actually pressing buttons and attacking people. They're inventing automated systems that are attacking without any human invention at all. So a tremendously terrifying situation to be in. $11.4 million lost every minute. I know the world's a big place. An amount of money I feel 16 minutes. There's a Magento, which is every 60 minutes, some small business. Again, really, really worrying things. And I pulled this map recently of attack strategies, and it was mapping the network attacks from criminals to their victims. And as you can see, it's a messy map, but pretty much everybody is attacking everyone. Sometimes we like to accuse some countries of being like havens for cyber criminals, China, Russia, but it truly is a global operation, everywhere to everywhere. There's criminals in every country attacking every other country. So this makes it really important for law enforcement to collaborate and for us to collaborate internationally to close this opportunity down. It's just, it's out of control, let's say. Let's pick Latin America in particular, obviously a key interest to the audience we have today. I pulled some statistics on our was Latin America compared to the rest of the world, and some frightening numbers, but I'll show you in a second, and not too disparate to the rest of the world, but 66% of companies, so 2/3 of companies, have really obvious application security issues that hackers could easily discover and exploit. Slightly less web encryption issues. So again, simply discoverable issues, maybe because of lack of governance, maybe shadow IT. But almost 2/3 of companies have problems with their certificates. And of course, the crypto, the certificates, the web encryption is designed to keep us safer. It's designed to solve the problem, not create problems. 10%, so 1 out of 10 companies have critical issues. And critical issues are one we would define as there's an exploit available right now that I could go and obtain or buy from a criminal that could give me access to somebody's systems. So 1 in 10 companies in Latin America, I could hack at a moment's notice if I just paid attention or just set a system in place to actually go do it. So that's quite worrying. If we look at those critical issues only, those 10% of issues, Chile, 23%, so 1 out of 4, let's say. Brazil and Argentina, 1 out of 5. Mexico, good. Belize, surprisingly, the best. Only 2% of the critical issues are coming out of Belize. But again, maybe because it's a small country with with sophisticated IT companies rather than restaurants and people new to the digital economy. Compare that to Europe. 14% of Europe has critical issues. So Latin America, better than Europe in terms of problems that could get people exploited right now. I don't like using charts, but I have a few in the deck to help us look at the data. But if I take some of the industries in Latin America, you can see accommodation and food compared to global, slightly worse, but not materially so. Manufacturing, again, right on the edge of the global average. Infotech, slightly under, but again, not statistical. Public administration, education, again, all slightly below the global average, but not in a material way, not in a way that would be any way leading. And I would attribute this as the fact that Europe and America is probably just a few years ahead in terms of digital adoption than Latin America. I don't see a trend there which is worrying or in any way, a trend that we couldn't recover from very rapidly. We look at the average risk by geography. The higher the number, the lower the risk. I'm sorry, it's kind of reversed. It's a score, so high scores are good scores, as it were. We can see here that Latin America, Caribbean, it's on par with Europe. 6.8, 6.84. USA slightly better off, but USA has a lot of tech-centric companies, a lot of regulation, data protection, and again, perhaps just slightly ahead in terms of the amount of time we've had digital adoption. But Europe, Latin America, both on a par. Canada obviously trending towards the US, Asia Pacific and Middle East Africa slightly behind. And again, if you think about it, Middle East Africa and Asia are also slightly behind again on their digital adoption, their pursuit of digital economies. So nothing here stands out as unexpected, but it's good to know there's room for improvement in Latin America. There's as much sophistication, as much technology accessible, as much drive and interest. So I would hope within a year or two that we would see some leveling of compared to the US. So that was my intro, setting the scene. Huge amount of losses of money, incredible, huge numbers of dollars lost to be honest, people who don't deserve it. My team in Mastercard is, we're the Stop Criminals Getting Rich team. That's what drives us. Every time a criminal is enriched in consequence of a good business person or an individual, it morally offends us. That's why we're driven to kind of solve these problems. But what I wanted to do is take three sections of my deck and talk about what we can actually do and who our adversaries are and how we can protect ourselves. So I'm going to start by some myths that I often hear when I talk to people about cyber criminals. And I'll start with the most prevalent myth. Myth one is that hackers target companies. A lot of companies say to me, I'm not very wealthy, I'm not very important. Why would a criminal bother to attack me? And the reason or the justification or the answer is they're not usually bothering to attack anyone in particular. As my joking slide here explains, robo-hacks, the automated attacks that people invent and they set them loose on the internet far outweigh the handcrafted attacks. So nobody's looking at every company and deciding whether they want to hack them or not. No criminal is choosing their victims, or very few criminals, I should say, are choosing their victims. They are inventing automated systems that they set loose on the internet, and they just go and attack everybody they can. So if you happen to be on the internet, you happen to have a small store or a large store, you happen to have some out-of-date software with one of those 1 in 10 critical vulnerabilities, at some point, one of these robotic automated systems is going to run across your website and hack you. And that's how it works, unfortunately. That's why the criminals are so successful, because unfortunately, they can prey on just human weakness, lack of attention, and really simple cybersecurity mistakes. So myth number one, you are not going to be targeted. Everybody is a target just by being online. Myth number two, hackers are geniuses. Again, people say to me, those hackers are so clever. The things they do are so advanced, and they find the most miraculous exploits. And that is true. There are a small number of truly brilliant cybersecurity professionals who have gone to, let's say, the dark side and have become hackers. But what they learned many years ago is they can sell that expertise to other people who are not so smart. And the vast majority of cyber criminals, the vast majority of people involved in cybercrime are just reusing those tools that are written by somebody else. And the challenge is, as again my slide kind of jokingly portrays, is we advertise our problems to the world. All our websites advertise what platforms they're built, what software they use, how they're configured. We willingly tell the world all of this, and the criminals just sweep that data up. A small amount of hacking is done by actual intelligence gathering, with criminals actually deciding and looking at websites and penetrating them. Those are the nation state attacks, the attacks against the Fortune 500 companies. But the vast majority, again, is all automated discovery of problems, because we willingly tell the criminals what's going on. And it's a bit like, imagine your house in your street. You've often walked past, I'm sure everyone on this call has walked past a house and thought they left their windows open. They've left their car unlocked. They don't look like they have a very secure door. We all look at properties and we think that doesn't look very safe. And that's what the criminals do to us. They look at our web properties and our online infrastructure and they determine the problem space. And they can do that very, very effectively now. And of course, because the analysis is automated, now the attack can be automated as well. I went on some publicly accessible sites and went looking for some problems recently. This is a little technical, but this site is one that specializes in telling investigators or telling people what technology websites are built from. And I asked it about coinhive.min.js. This is a classic exploitable piece of code. There are published, documented ways of using this piece of code to break into people's websites. So, with a quick search, nothing more complicated than I would do with Google for any other question, I found 4,500 nearly vulnerable websites. So as an attacker, this is like, okay, there's a lot of houses with their doors open right here. Look at another one. Say I'm not even clever enough to do that. Well, I can go on the dark web and I can buy technology for a few $100s or less to help me break into people's sites. Here's an advertisement for some ATM malware. So some technology I can buy, and this is $5,000. So this is expensive for the dark web, but I can buy this piece of technology which will help me hack into cash machines and take money from them. I don't have to invent it. I don't have to understand cybersecurity. I just go and put my credit card in or use Bitcoins. Maybe I want some information on people. Here's an advertisement for some ransomware that will attack somebody's website and send me all their information, $39. So I don't have to be clever and I don't have to be particularly active. So next myth, hackers are admirable and cool. And if you've watched any movies, Mr. Robot, War Games is the one from my generation, of course. Hackers are always kind of portrayed as these cool, edgy Robin Hood kind of characters, often like teenagers, often working in their basements with noble objectives, noble goals, but they just happen to be hackers. Well, that's pretty far from the truth. This guy here, Robert, he was one of the first convicted hackers back in the 80s. He created the Morris worm, which was an academic project which went out of control and caused a huge problem across the whole internet, shutting down systems everywhere. He had no intention of being a hacker. He was trying to do some research, but his program had unintended consequences. So he kind of fits that movie hacker role of, young, underfed, poor diet, not really trying to damage the world, but misadventure. But this is 30, 40 years ago now. He got 400 hours of community service, 3 years of probation. So he didn't, the consequences were not too bad for his crimes. Let's look at this guy, Marcel. He hacks celebrities and politicians. He's been blackmailing people, exploiting people, causing people a great deal of social and angst, anxiety. Really evil, evil man. 4 years in Romanian jail. It's good that we caught him. Zachary here, he stole from banks around $100 million, if I remember correctly, sold it to other hackers and helped other hackers steal even more from banks. 2.5 years in jail. We got him. Maxim, he is renowned for pictures on social media of his money, his Lamborghinis, his cash, etc. He again has been holding people's data to ransom, making them pay money to get their data back, threatening to exploit people, blackmail people, etc. He's hiding in Russia at the moment. He can't leave thanks to Interpol. We've got him cornered at least. This guy, Ross, created a website to help people buy things, which are difficult to find on eBay and Amazon. Of course, this is Ross who invented the Silk Road, the most popular site to buy illegal drugs and illegal goods of about 4 or 5 years ago. He got double life without parole plus 40 years. So, he's out of the picture now. And I think we're still trying to track down the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies that were used to pay for things on his website. Nathan stole and sold financial health records on the dark web. He hacked Netflix and made Netflix show available to the masses. So again, a combination of providing free entertainment, but also the evil side of stealing people's health information and blackmailing them. 5 years and he forfeited $1.4 million. Two guys this week, Jose and Kelvin, stole 101 Bitcoin, which is about $2 million from citizens of Venezuela. So even the Venezuelan data Bitcoin or cryptocurrency trading platform wasn't secure. They were recently arrested. We are yet to hear what kind of penalty they're going to serve. And last week, or in fact earlier this week, the TMT group was arrested in Nigeria. Commodity malware, so simple malware bought on the dark web, simple phishing, simple spam and scam campaigns. But they managed to penetrate 50,000 companies in 150 countries. So again, arrested by Interpol 2020. So these people are not noble. They're not people we should be envying or glamorizing or looking up to. We should be educating our youth that cyber criminals have kind of not people they should aspire to be and not people they should look up to. And luckily, as you see here, we've got better as global law enforcement in removing these people from the problem. So myth 4, hacking is a victimless crime. A comment that many young hackers, new hackers kind of tell me, well, I did some credit card fraud, but nobody lost any money. Well, of course, the merchants lose money because goods and services are increased in price to cover the cost of fraud. It was insured. Well, of course, insurance policies increase if there's egregious fraud. So there's always a victim. The victims in Latin America are quite interesting because the cyber criminals tend to be the cartels, the people we know as being physical criminals from drugs and guns in the past. Now they've turned to cybercrime. Here, Solaris was generating around 2 to 5 million US a month from cybercrime back in 2018. So huge amount of funding to criminals that we all know are particularly physical, particularly relevant in the physical world and particularly harmful in the physical world. Now their industry is funded by the cybercrime world. So I think it's improper to say that it's victimless. I promised I'd break down the spending a little bit. This is from an analytics that was done a couple of years ago, but it's still relevant today, of how the criminals are spending the money they're getting. So 20% on criminal activity, drug production, terrorism, human trafficking, and another 20% on hedonistic spending on drugs and prostitution. So 40% of the money that cyber criminals are generating is being pumped back into paying for other criminal activity or creating criminal activity. That, of course, is a different perspective when you think about somebody who pays a cybercrime ransom of $1 million. If you were really understanding, well, $400,000 of that cybercrime ransom was going to fund drugs and trafficking and attacks on other victims, it becomes less palatable. There becomes a moral and a human aspect to it. So myth 5, through all the depression and all the negativity I've told you so far and all the scams, sometimes it's easy to think you just can't win, that the criminals are always going to be better, always going to be one step ahead. But the law enforcement community continually erodes this effectiveness. It's better and better every year at finding criminals, taking criminals down, removing them, stealing their money, or I should say recovering their money. It's not stealing if you steal it from a criminal, of course. Blocking their access, reducing the scope. And of course, there's a whole cybersecurity industry trying to help the world protect themselves from these people as well. So it's not completely doom and gloom. And the main challenge is just to think about it as these two pictures. And I talked about advertising vulnerabilities and advertising your weaknesses. If you put yourself in the perspective of a traditional burglar, a traditional criminal walking down the street, which house are you going to go and target? Which house are you going to go and check the door on? The one with the alarm sign or the one without? And that's really the best advice I can give everybody on this call as to how to better protect yourselves from cyber criminals is just be slightly better than average. That's all you have to do, is be a little better, because the criminals are lazy and they have enough victims to attack who have no protection at all. If you have a little bit of protection, you have good passwords, you patch your systems, you remove your out-of-date software, you'll be significantly better off than the majority. The challenge that we have as an industry, and Mastercard as well, is helping everybody raise up just that little bit, just to make it a little harder for the criminals to act. We can make a huge difference. So that's section one of my presentation, which is what can we as who is our adversary? What is motivating them? Of course, let's summarize it. And there's like, go get 'em kid for us. Just remember, hackers don't target companies, they target everybody. They're not geniuses, but they do prey on our simple mistakes. There's not admirable, they're criminals. They spend their money on things which have huge social evil, and we should be morally inspired to stop them in their journey. They're always victims. Hacking is never a victimless crime. There's always a social impact, and you can win or eliminate the common attacks just by being a little better than average. So let's push forward, because I know I'm taking far too much time. What can we do as a company to protect ourselves? Firstly, first thing every company should be doing is adopting a risk management framework. And I picked several off the internet here. A risk management framework is a framework which helps you categorize your risk, understand your risk, define your risk. There are simple ones, there are complicated ones, but it gives you a common language which you can talk to vendors and analysts and start having a journey of risk management. So that's step number one. Step number two is educate your users. We often hear that the biggest weakness we have is our user community, and they're the ones where most criminals are attacking through phishing, through password reuse, through common exploits. But again, I picked a company at random. There's a whole industry of companies who will help train your users in how to be better at cybersecurity, how to make less mistakes, how to see a phishing attempt, how to understand business email compromise. But get your users on side and help your users understand that they have a part to play in protecting your companies from cyber attack. Just being a little more diligent makes a huge difference. Step three, know your whole infrastructure and your perimeter. Especially now as everybody's working remotely, our perimeter, the amount of infrastructure that's connected to our company's systems, the amount of devices that are sending and receiving email and doing network traffic and getting access to our data has exploded. If you don't know all those things, if you don't know what's connected to your environment, how can you protect it? So again, I picked a company at random, Armis, who help you understand all your infrastructure, what's protected, what isn't, what's out of date, what isn't, and will help the systems people, the technology people in your company understand where their problem space is. So that's step three. Step four, monitor as much as you can. And again, there are innumerable companies that will help you with monitoring. Monitoring is not just, tell me everything that's going on. It's tell me the priority of things that's going on. Help me decide what's most important and what's least important. There is so much information in IT systems in companies nowadays that no person could ever read and understand and analyze all of it. You need help deciding what to focus on today, what the biggest risk of the day is. And again, a whole industry of companies who specialize in helping small companies and large companies analyze, prioritize, act, and measure the response on that. And step five, have an incident response plan. There's an old adage in cybersecurity, it's not if you'll be hacked, it's when. It's very negative, but it is somewhat true that eventually some cybersecurity incident will happen in your company. Maybe somebody loses a USB stick with important information, sensitive information on it. Maybe you get hacked, maybe you get ransomware. Have the beginnings of an incident response plan. Doesn't have to be complex, doesn't have to be comprehensive. It will improve over time once you start it. Again, lots of companies will help you define a plan, start building a plan, but have a plan to begin with. Know who you're going to call. Do you have any obligations to disclose to some government regulators in your state, in your country, or not? What companies do you want to bring in if certain things happen? If you come to work one day and all your computers stop working, what's your plan? So just start by sketching a basic plan out and then getting it deeper and better, testing it, and develop this plan over time. The worst situation for a company is they get attacked through some cyber angle and they have no plan to start with. Just having, as I say, that simple one-page plan as to who you're going to call, what the business continuity plan is, what happens if the computers don't work, that's a great start. So I went through that quite quickly. But again, my 5 points for companies, how to better protect yourself from cyber attack. Risk management frameworks, so you have a common vocabulary on how to talk about risk, how to talk about risk with the vendors you might want to engage with the analysts, and how to understand how you can solve or reduce some of that cyber risk by doing practical things. Get your users on your side, help educate them, bring them into the battle to protect you from the criminals. Know where your IT is, know how far your perimeter is, what systems are being used to analyze your data, where your data is going. Understand how big an IT estate you have to protect. Monitor as much as you can, but find ways of prioritizing the data in those monitoring systems. So you're not just running around fighting fires, you're actually being very strategic about what you're fixing and where you're putting your value. And start building or perfecting your incident response plan. Make sure that the simple case of what happens if nothing works is covered, and then, well, what happens if our data is discovered? What happens if we have ransomware? What happens if somebody loses sensitive information? Start building a better and better plan over time. So, final section I wanted to talk about is for us, for you and me. What can we do to protect ourselves against cyber criminals? Obviously, our companies are really important. They're our employers. If our companies fail, that's really bad for us. But of course, we're important as well. We want to protect ourselves as we get more and more into the digital economy. And my first of my 5 points for you as individuals is first, remember your worth. A lot of people say, well, why would a criminal attack me? Well, what have I got that they want to steal from me? Well, almost everything you do online is valuable to criminals in some way. And I pulled some current prices of data from the dark web criminal marketplaces for us. Your Spotify account is worth 21 cents, which might sound, well, that's disappointing. But what if a criminal could use an automated attack to attack 10 million Spotify users? Now you can see where this becomes interesting. Hulu, $8, Netflix, $8, PayPal, almost $250. So this is an example why your PayPal password should be very unique and special and strong and not the same as any other password you have. Almost everything we have digitally can be either used by a criminal to further crime or sold by a criminal to somebody else who can use it. So don't ever think that you're too simple or not interesting to a cyber criminal. Everything you have, every electronic system you use is valuable in some way. Secondly, perfect your passwords. And I talked about the PayPal password. A lot of attacks at the moment are done by what's called password stuffing. And what that means is people using the same password on multiple accounts or multiple services. There are many systems like LinkedIn and Facebook and Yahoo who have been hacked over the years. And the lists of those usernames, which are usually email addresses, and the passwords are well understood and well known and well distributed. And here's a website, Have I Been Pwned, which will help you see if any of your passwords have been disclosed. Again, the criminals have all this information. So if you happen to use the same password on LinkedIn as you did with your e-banking system, obviously the criminals now know how to break into your bank. So again, password management is quite important. I encourage you to look at Have I Been Pwned? Look up whether any of your accounts have been stolen. It's eye-opening, and it will encourage you to have a better password strategy. Number 3, look out for phishing. I'm hoping everybody in this call understands what phishing is. It's a mechanism of exploitation by sending people emails that are not quite what they mean, trying to encourage people to click on links. One of the trend with these emails is they're always an urgent call to action. There's always an urgently, you must click on this link now. You must do this thing now. So that's a point to be skeptical if you ever get an email saying you've got to do something. Here's a classic one. Your password will expire in 24 hours. Please click this link. My university, not very clever, but quite successful nevertheless. Here's another one. Save your stuff. A call to action, an urgent call to action. So sign in now. So again, skeptical, probably a phishing attack. Here's another one from Bank of Americans. Slightly typo, trying to get people to act quickly again. There's been a number of invalid login attempts. Click here to begin the verification process. Of course, clicking here will send you to a lookalike website, which will capture your bank details, and then you'll find your accounts are empty. So again, little skepticism. It's not so obvious when you first look at this that it's a typo. It's Bank of Americans, but obviously a phishing attack. And the criminals have not been shy to take on the COVID challenge as well. Here's one from the UK where a UK government lookalike website offering people some money back, £128 back. Access your funds now. Call to action, some urgency from Gov UK Notify. So again, suspicious, but you can imagine somebody in who is not wealthy would be tempted to click on this. And of course, it will get some information, or get some private information from them and probably result in them having a fiscal loss. So phishing is something that the messaging or the tactic doesn't change, the message does. It went from, you have a rich uncle somewhere in the world who left you lots of money, please pay some money to get that money, to I'm your grandchild and I've lost my money and I'm in a desperate situation, please send me money, all the way through now to we see scams on, we have your COVID test results, click here to obtain them, click here to pay for the latest COVID result, etc. So same scam, different messaging all the way through. Much like know your perimeter for companies, for individuals, is clean your digital junk. We are constantly buying new digital devices, new iPods, new phones, cameras, and we often resell those, or we put them on eBay, or we give them to friends. We dispose of them improperly. And there are lots and lots of stories about people buying used devices on eBay and on the marketplaces and finding very, very confidential information. Luckily, most companies now offer a cleanup kind of advice, how to wipe their devices, how to sanitize their devices. The information on how to clean most digital devices is readily available online, but we have to be diligent and we have to choose to actually use that. So again, advice on step 4 is, if you're going to upgrade a device and pass a device on to somebody else, make sure you clean all your stuff off it. You don't want other people having access to your pictures, your accounts, or any of your data. And finally, for a lot of people on this call, those 4 steps will seem fairly obvious. And you'll already say, yes, I already do those things and I understand those things. But if you are in that privileged position, take an opportunity to teach people who aren't so lucky and aren't so educated. Teach your parents, teach your grandparents, share the information on these scams, share the information on what the criminals are doing and how evil they are and what they do with their money. Help make everybody aware of and protect themselves better. As I said right at the beginning, the vast majority of people are hacked because they use the same passwords, they use out-of-date software, they make simple mistakes. If we can help the whole world make less simple mistakes, we can make the job of the cyber criminal dramatically more difficult. So, summary, criminals can sell everything and anything. You are valuable. No matter what you think, everything you do online is value to a criminal. Perfect your passwords. Don't use the same password for gaming sites that you do for your banking site. Have some discipline and some protection there. Look out for phishing. Be aware of phishing attacks. It's still highly prevalent and highly positive for the criminals. It's a great money earner for them. Clean your digital junk before you pass it on. Don't make the criminal's job easier by letting them buy something on eBay that can give them access to your accounts. And share and educate people who are less fortunate and less knowledgeable with yourself. So putting those together, if you think about the business side, a risk management framework, education, protect your infrastructure, monitor as much as you can, have an instant response plan. The key thing in cybersecurity at the moment is not to be the slowest rabbit. There's a story they tell in America, which always makes me laugh, that if you and your friend are running away from a bear, you just have to be able to run faster than your friend. And that's really true in cybersecurity. If you're the slowest rabbit, the criminals have very easy, basic systems already running that will find you and hack you and take advantage of you. To protect yourself better, just be a faster rabbit. And with that, I will pause the presentation and hopefully we can engage in some questionnaire.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you very much for these great insights for all the audience. Incredible how vulnerable we are, and very interesting to see that guys, the guys that are behind the cybercrime.
Yeah,
I think that
not good people.
Not good people. Yeah. I think that nobody of us want to be the slowest rabbit. No, that is a very good message. So now we are going to spark up to see the questions of our audience. I'm going to change to Spanish. A toda la audiencia que está conectada, los invitamos a que ingresen a finovista.sparkup.live. Ahí ingresan el código YHYPL, o también pueden ingresar a través de su dispositivo móvil, escaneando el código que figura ahí en pantalla. Es momento de escucharlos y hacerles preguntas a Simon Hunt. La verdad que muy interesante los insights que nos dio a todos, los tips realmente de cómo cuidarnos nosotros y cómo cuidar a nuestras empresas de estos ciberdelitos. Entonces, damos unos minutos a la audiencia para que empiece a escribir sus preguntas, a que tomen su tiempo para ingresar a finovista.sparkup.live. Ahí ingresan el código YHYPL y ahí empezamos a hacer las preguntas. Pueden tanto hacer preguntas como también votar las que más les gusten para que Simon las responda. So, Simon, here on the screen, you can see the questions, so feel comfortable to choose the ones that you see in the screen.
Sure. So let's start with the first one, machine learning. Machine learning is a great tool for cybersecurity professionals. It's also a great tool for cybersecurity criminals. There is somewhat of an arms race between the two gangs, as it were. We use machine learning to help us qualify and decide what to act on, to prioritize things. And the criminals use machine learning to find victims. So, you know, they always say math is not good or bad, it's just math. And that's what machine learning is. So yes, both systems have value. The one challenge we have is machine learning is some of the things we have to do, require us to prove why we did them. And sometimes machine learning is quite difficult to unpick why an AI system, let's call it, made a particular decision. So in my world, you know, people want to know, why did you decide to take that action? And they want me to explain exactly how to do it. So sometimes that is confusing, whereas in the criminals world, nobody asked them why they did what they did. So somewhat on the back foot, but a technology that's used by almost every antivirus company now, every network security company, Mastercard uses, I mean, every time you use your Mastercard, there's machine learning trying to understand if it's fraud or not. So in wide scale use. How do regulations help mitigate payment fraud? Well, regulations ensure that being lax about security is not a competitive advantage. Let me put it like that. Regulations ensure that everybody is held to the same standard and everybody plays their part in helping secure the ecosystem. So an example might be the regulations now around the liability of using chip transactions versus mag stripe transactions. You know, if you put your card in with the chip, if the transaction's approved, the bank is responsible for the transaction. If you swipe your card with the mag stripe, the merchant is responsible. And the reason is I can copy the magnetic stripe of a credit card really easily, but I can't copy the chip. So we have said to the merchants, if you want to take mag stripe, you're responsible for the fraud. It's your choice. But if you use chips, you're not responsible. So regulations help rationalize everyone and help make sure everybody, as I say, plays equally and participates and helps secure the ecosystem. What password management do I recommend? I don't know Bitwarden, I must admit. LastPass is very popular. Since most of my passwords now seem to be related to websites, I must admit I use Google Chrome and it manages them all for me. I don't know Bitwarden. I wish I could give you a commentary. I'm not endorsing LastPass, but I've not heard any negativity about LastPass. So I would think a password manager from any of the major companies would be reasonable. I know McAfee has one, Symantec has one. I think they're all, I would just use one that's backed by a company that has a reputation they cannot afford to lose. You know, don't use a free password manager or one from a company you don't recognize because it could be a scam. Being a race between bad guys and good guys, you think that protect fraud, we should think as cyber attackers. Yeah, that's always a good thing to understand your adversary. But as I said, the attackers are not particularly clever right now. Yeah, if you want to think, I mean, thinking of attacker means let's use the same password everywhere, because that makes the job easier for the attacker. If it helps you to understand that using the same password everywhere is obviously something, a really simplistic person could attack me, then it helps. The challenge I have is usually educated people who are not IT experts, not really digitally savvy, helping them understand that they have a part to play in protecting themselves, and that by being a little more diligent, a little more sensible, they can defeat hackers. If you think back 5 years, it wasn't common that we would all use a PIN on our phones. We were prepared to risk losing our phone and having somebody have access to all our pictures, contacts, data, because using a PIN was too difficult for us. Now, luckily, Touch ID, Face ID has eliminated that. But a little bit of friction can be quite difficult in cybersecurity. The list is scrolling around on me. Do I agree that the fighting cyber battle with issuers, processors, bosses, and schemes must all be together? Absolutely, absolutely. We all must play equally together. And one of the challenges I have as Mastercard is I'm always upsetting somebody because the liability moves around between the merchant, the issuer, etc. To be honest, the best situation is if everybody's equally upset. If everybody considers it fair but upsetting, then we kind of have struck a fair balance. But yes, everybody needs to be joining together. We as a network are trying to push more and more secure, less fraudulent ways of doing things, like the chips, for instance, which I know are very prevalent in Latin America, not so prevalent in the US. The mags, getting rid of the mag stripes, card not present, where people buying things online. There are secure protocols which are more difficult for merchants to implement, but have a greater level of security that reduce those things. So it's always a balance, but yes, everybody needs to participate. Everybody needs to contribute to the discussion with the common goal of removing the fraud from the equation. Do I think Bitcoin solves the online payment fraud and chargebacks that are not avoidable with current online payment methods? No, I would confess I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin, if only because I see how many Bitcoins are stolen, how many exchanges are raided, how many people lose their money because of insecure Bitcoins, even to the simple point of people sending the Bitcoin to the wrong address and then realizing there's no recovery. So no, I don't think Bitcoin solves anything. Bitcoin has all the benefits of cash. It's anonymous, non-recoverable, difficult to trace. It's ideally geared up for corruption and theft. So no, I want to pay for things using a mechanism where if everything goes wrong, I get my money back. Like if the goods don't get delivered, I get refunded. If the goods are poor quality, I get refunded. If the payment goes to the wrong person, I get refunded. I want those kind of protections in an online payment system, not this send and it's gone forever. And I'd be happy to talk more about that problem. What's my mother's maiden name? Yeah, good question. And the other question is, what's my favorite movie? It's very interesting if you drop that into a conversation with somebody. So what's your favorite movie? People will usually just tell you. I will tell you my password is the last 6 digits of pi, and the mathematicians amongst you will know why that's funny. Where do we go? Can I move up and down this list at all?
I think that they are all answered.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So thanks, Simon, for your time. Thank you.
No, thank you, everyone.
Amazing insights for all the audience and all the ecosystem of fintech and insurtech in LATAM.
It's been a pleasure.
We continue with some announcements for all the audience. Gracias, Simon. Thanks, Simon. A toda la audiencia los invitamos a seguirnos en redes sociales en @FINNOSUMMIT. Ahí podrán seguir las últimas novedades sobre eventos y también noticias y otros temas relevantes para todo el ecosistema fintech e insurtech de toda Latinoamérica. Así que muchas gracias, también muchísimas gracias a Mastercard por apoyar esta iniciativa, por darnos estos consejos de ciberseguridad que tan importantes son en estos momentos. Así que muchísimas gracias a todos por conectarse. Este mismo video lo van a poder encontrar en el canal que tenemos de FINNOSUMMIT en YouTube. Así que pueden seguirnos ahí y compartir este video, que como dijo también Simon en un momento, no solo nosotros tenemos que cuidarnos del cibercrimen, sino también ayudar a que todo el mundo también se cuide. Así que compartan este video con estos tips. Gracias a toda la audiencia, que tengan muy buena tarde y nos vemos en la próxima edición de FINNOSUMMIT Hour, que va a ser el próximo jueves, ¿sí? Así que nos vemos ahí. Síganos en redes sociales. Muchas gracias. Bonita tarde. Hasta luego.